it again. We're going back to Omaha. And it's on to the College World Series Final. The 2015 National Champions.
Postseason baseball is back here at Disharoon Park for the 11th time under head coach Brian O'Connor. The Wahoos will host an NCAA regional. They will open up play in the Charlottesville Regional Friday afternoon against Penn. That's a noon first pitch. St. John's and Mississippi State, the other two teams in this Charlottesville Regional. And with that, we welcome you into an NCAA regional edition of 1186, the podcast, the official podcast of the Virginia baseball program. I am Damon Dillman, joined as always by Scott Fitzgerald and Andrew Ramspacker as we get you ready for what the Who's hope is another 1,186-mile run to Omaha that will begin here in Charlottesville. And our special guest this week is a guy who's had a few moments of postseason baseball here in Charlottesville and in Omaha. We welcome in to the show Kenny Towns, a member of the 2015 National Championship team, also played on the 2014 team that reached the finals of the College World Series, lost to Vanderbilt that year. Kenny, can I call you Mr. June?
You already did, so you can just go ahead.
All right, we'll roll with it. But let me ask you this. Obviously, like we said, you've played in a lot of these postseason games, been in a lot of these moments. What is it like now that this time of year gets here within this program and you start to get ready? It's Wednesday now, the open practice on Thursday, games start on Friday. What is it like as it starts to ramp up and you start to get ready?
Yeah, it's an exciting time of year, especially with like school getting out. Like your main focus now is just, all right, baseball. So just being able to come to the field every day, knowing that like, all right, we're here. Our journey has started. We start every year knowing 1186. We tap the wall every time we go out there. So it's just everyone knows how much that number 1186 means to the program, and it all starts here. So and especially getting a chance to do it in your home park at Davenport Field is just incredible. Disharoon Park, pardon me.
At Davenport Field, though. But
yeah, it's still Davenport Field.
Yeah, it's still it's still Davenport Field. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Your first 3 years, you played here. You opened up here in a regional. What is it like to open up here and sort of the electricity that's in this building? And we felt it last year was like a renaissance in that regard because it had been so many years. But what's the electricity and the energy like in this ballpark postseason time?
It's amazing. I'll never forget. It's just like, of course, throughout the regular season, you get some exciting games, you get some big crowds, but it's just like every single hit, every single run is like it's a roar. Like everyone knows how important every single out is, how important every single run is. So right away you're feeling it. You get some jitters for sure, but obviously those kind of fade away after doing it for a little bit. But it's just an exciting time to be at Davenport Field, and just to be able to go out there in front of our great fans is an incredible thing. And I'm jealous of these guys getting to do it again.
Are there things like this time of year, like specifically? I mean, you guys play a ton of games. Maybe go dial it back to your freshman year. Is there something that popped out like that kind of like, whoa, this is different? Was it the crowd? Was it like the press conferences and all the NCAA hoopla that comes around? Is there anything like different from the 56 to 58 games you play in the regular season to coming here in the NCAA tournament?
Nothing I remember like crazy stood out to me, but I remember playing at home. Like they had to have some rules to where like you couldn't go into the locker room during the game, like
right.
Get all your stuff. You might have to play in a different dugout. Not that has too much effect on the actual playing the game, but it is kind of like different. You're used to your routine, having your locker, being able to do whatever you need to do there, and then just kind of having to not have access to that. It wasn't like a negative affecting thing, but it was just, that was one thing I noticed, like, oh, this is a little different.
Yeah, I think they've done away with that, which is always weird. They make the host team come out of their dugout, move to the visitors' dugout. I think that is no longer a rule, which finally that makes sense. Like I said, the Who's will be in their third base dugout the whole weekend. So I'm sure that was kind of a pretty, not dramatic, but just a weird thing playing baseball.
Do they still switch dugouts? I would assume, like home and away.
Yeah, no matter what, UVA will be in their dugout, so that's cool. Now, in terms of the three visiting teams, if UVA is not playing, they'll swap around.
Gotcha.
Kenny, obviously the title of this podcast, right? 1186. This is something that we discussed with Oak on the first ever episode of like how that came about, and there's even some discrepancy as whether it's exactly 11,000 or 1,186 miles to Charlottesville. But Oak showed us like a card that Mac had given, I think, to their first team here that had that, and all the players like put it in their wallet. When you got here, did you get anything, or was that just such an assumed part of the program, the 1186 thing? Like, did you have to get educated on that?
I think right when you come in there, you do get educated. We didn't get any pamphlets or anything, or souvenirs. But I tell you what, like right away, you knew first time you walk into that door, you're smacking that 1186 sign right when you get in the locker room, right when you go out to the field. So right from day one, that was instilled in that, and just to show you how important that number was to this program.
And you came here at a time when, they had just been to Omaha, right? 2 of the previous 3 years, coming off of that 2011 season with, one of the top teams in the country heading into the tournament. So what was the level of expectation? Could you feel that coming here? And someone who's from Northern Virginia, you were nearby it, right? You saw the Danny Holston and that whole era kind of rise and put UVA really on that like national map. What did you sense about the expectations when you walked in here, stemming from what had happened the previous couple of years?
So I remember I committed the summer before my senior year, pardon me. So I remember like being able to follow them the whole season, and that 2011 season when Chris Taylor hit that walk-off, I remember sitting there watching that, being the most excited person in the world, and maybe second to Chris Taylor. But I just remember just being thrilled, just running out to talk to my parents, like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I'm getting a chance to be a part of this next year. So like right away, like you just knew that, all right, Omaha's an option. They're going this year. So I'm excited to get there and see if I can do my part to help get them back.
We were in this room on Monday watching the selection show, and just the guys obviously knew they were getting in this year. And it got me wondering back to 2015 and what it was like watching that selection show, because obviously those first 3 years for you guys knew you were in. It was a question of what seed, who was coming here, and all that stuff. But what do you remember from watching the 2015 show? Were you confident you were in? Did you honestly not know? What was it like from that perspective?
I remember we kind of had a bad ACC tournament showing, so we figured we had a chance, of course, but it wasn't like we're sitting there like, oh, I can't wait to see our name called. But I remember we got really lucky. If I'm correct, we were the first regional announced, so we were part of like whatever the first regional they said. So it kind of took away that nervousness of having to wait for 62 other teams called before you. So it was definitely nerve-wracking, but at least it didn't last too long.
Lake Elsinore, California. Like, had you ever heard of that name before? Like, what was the thing that popped up in your mind when you saw that flash across the screen?
Thank God we got it. That was all. Okay, like, oh, good. I'll tell me when to be on the flight, and I'll be there. So it was just one of those things. You're just like overcome with joy. But we're like, all right. I think Oak mentioned too. It's like we've had some good success in this program, like flying out, going away for these regionals, and we've kind of beat some good teams at their own place. So there was definitely no worry about going out there, and especially we had a really weird beginning of that year traveling up and down the East Coast just with all like that snow. So I think we were kind of used to that slight adversity, so it really didn't make a thing. And of course, I think UCLA was the other team there. So we were like, oh, we're packing our bags for 2 weeks. Let's stay out there and do the thing. And then obviously we got lucky and got to do it at Davenport. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, obviously Maryland upsets, which was the number 1 national seed, which was UCLA. Which meant then that you and your super regional opponent had to share a flight back, right, to DC. People made a big deal about that, but I remember the players kind of downplaying it a little bit. What was that like to be? And can you put us in that plane? You guys were across the aisle from Maryland, who you were up to play in a super regional a couple of days later.
To be completely honest, there's no memory that specifically sticks out, so I think that's a good thing. There was nothing came up that was that could have been a problem, but I think everyone just because both 3 seeds getting out of a good regional, like I think everyone was just, I'm happy to be on this flight back and we're getting to play some more baseball. Like I'm sure we're like talking about him in the side, but there was no bad blood or anything. But I think it was definitely made more of a bigger deal outside of the flight than the guys on it.
I think that's the most like as an outsider, you three kind of live that. When I heard that, I think that is the wildest story that came out of that whole 15 season was that two teams playing each other on the same exact flight coming back from LA, literally the furthest flight you could make probably in the continental US. But like even you see them in the airport, like when we travel as with the teams and stuff, and you're always wearing UVA gear, people always come up to you and say, "Go Hoos" or whatever. I mean, you had to have recognized there's Maryland right next to you, right?
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember too much about like the kind of before it, but I think like maybe who knows? We got them the year before, so maybe we thought maybe we were walking with our chests a little pumped out. But I think everyone hopping on that flight was just like thrilled, and I really can't even remember too much about it. So like nothing crazy went on. I think there was some cards being played, something like that. But other than that, there was no issues whatsoever.
You mentioned the previous year in 2014 and 2015, although they were very similar in terms of like the duration of the postseason. You guys both got to the championship game. One year you won it, one year you lost it. They were both very different in the sense of your preseason number one in 2014. You had your class was loaded with all these prospects and guys, and it was the draft year for all of you guys, and there was a lot of pressure. And Oaks admitted to this, at how he changed up his demeanor when it got to the postseason from 14 to 15. How did you see the way? Did he not I don't want to say he went lax, but it felt like he was a little more, hands off. What was his approach? Do you remember in 14, where that pressure packed season where you guys were, on paper supposed to win the national championship, to 2015 where, you guys talked about your mantra was a chip in a chair and you just were lucky to have a chance?
I remember in 2014, I can't think it wasn't oh, he was extra stern in the postseason just because we had to do this, but he was it was just kind of more like we were just whatever in game 60 of the regular season, just with kind of this demeanor. But obviously still coach was great, and it was more disappointing, of course, not to pull that off. But I do remember in 2015, even starting going out to Lake Elsinore, it was more of, there was still that he talked about how important this was, what we have in front of us. But I think it was more of the trust and just all right, these guys have been doing it all year. They earned this. They earned the right to be here. Let's just let them go out there and play their game. And and obviously there was no, like you said, no lax, but I think it was just more of just the kind of ease. There was enough pressure on us. I think he just didn't feel the need to put any more on us. Let us go out there and play some loose and relaxed baseball. And I think everyone will remember the Ernie Clement pre-game, hockey or whatever stuff they're doing before the games, playing some tennis. It was always after our visuals with Coach Mack, we'd do something silly. So that'll always stick out to me.
How much could you do, kind of following up on what Andrew just asked, but going back to 2014, how much could you guys kind of sense those expectations? And what was there an actual palpable pressure that you guys could feel that season?
I mean, they're definitely preseason number one. We're and everything, we were ranked high. We knew we had a good ball club going in, especially the year before. Even as the younger team, we still were a national seed the year before. So we knew we had a club that could really do it all. But I don't think we undermined how difficult we knew it was to do that. How it's not easy to win 5 straight games to get to Omaha in the postseason. So I think we definitely understood that. But I think more than it being pushed on the outside, and maybe, so I know we didn't have, our overall record ended up being great, but I think we had a little maybe weren't playing as good as we should have throughout the year. So guys probably put some little more pressure on themselves as opposed to just kind of going out there and letting their talent take care of it. So I definitely remember a little bit, but I think towards when it got to the postseason and all that stuff, I can think of dogpiling in 2014. It wasn't, I jumped out of there like a maniac. So you know what I mean? There was still that incredible excitement. There's no expecting to go to Omaha, I don't think. Of course that's the goal, always the end goal, but I think everyone in this building knows how hard it is to really do that. So just the excitement for doing that was incredible.
For those of you, for guys like you and Joe and all the pitchers and guys who were part of that 2014 team who were back in 2015, how much did that experience maybe kind of help keep the ship afloat or pointed in the right direction when things weren't going as well mid-season for that team?
Yep, absolutely. I think that was really key for us, just because even though things weren't going our way, and we were like, all right, if we can just get into the postseason, like that's what we got to do. I remember saying like we had to kind of start our postseason early because we really had to fight for that spot to get in. Had like a nice series against North Carolina to take them down, but just knowing we had to get into the postseason, then all of our goals are in front of us. Like every time we go in there, the goal is to get the Omaha. The goal, of course, you want to win the regular season ACC. You want to win the ACC tournament. You want to win every game you play. But when you get in the field of 64, all those goals are in front of you for that postseason. So like we were just. And Coach Ed, of course, chip in a chair was just kind of our motto going into there. And I think that was just kind of exactly what we were just thinking. We just got to get in there.
You mentioned one thing about an individual player in 15 who wasn't there in 14, who did some things, did some, antics or whatever, played hockey before the game. And that was Ernie Clement.
Oh, yeah.
Who was a freshman, right? That came in here, and like, how important was his presence to that 15 team? Like, kind of like feel like his personality kind of like fit like kind of this like, hey, we got a chance type of thing. Yeah, what the hell? Or let's go win this thing. He just kind of had that carefree attitude. Like, how important was that as this little 18-year-old hockey player from Rochester, New York, that addition to the team, and how did that help that team get to what it did?
He was a trip all year. It just got shown more at the end because the camera on him a little more maybe. But I think just that excitement he had just to be there every day, like not, like everyone goes through their struggles, but you couldn't even notice it on his face. Like he just kind of went about his business and just played the game. He played it hard. He played it well, and obviously it always helps when you're an incredibly good player for us in the playoffs too. So that always makes those goofy antics slide a little more.
Did he ever drive you nuts as like the leader and the senior of that team? How often did he just like drive you nuts with little things he did?
Not too bad, but I think there was a missed optional practice, and we found out he was doing flag football in the fall. So I think
that's still my favorite.
And I'll never forget too, like all the freshmen coming in, usually like they're getting really tested in like the fall practices, like Max, like, all right, what should you have done there, this and that, and everyone's kind of gets nervous. This is kind of like trying to get the answer. They ask Ernie, he's like, and then just like rattles it off. It was just so funny. You just had like something like he had a little slower heart rate than maybe the rest of the freshmen. I think would be a good way to put it.
Mississippi State's one of the teams coming in here this weekend. Obviously, they were here in 2013 for that Super Regional. What do you remember about that weekend? The biggest thing I remember from that weekend is just the way that their fans were just relentless. And it was, I don't want to say it was like a home series for them, but it was an interesting environment here that weekend.
Yep, I remember a lot of the cowbell. I believe there was a hefty serving of. But I remember it wasn't exciting. Like even though like of course you could hear them a little too, but that makes games exciting. I remember it just being an incredibly exciting series. I don't remember the ins and outs as much, other than we lost both games. I certainly remember that. But it's I think that for Mississippi State coming here, they probably have some ammo. Like not that anyone is still there playing from when I was, but it's just still like they have some tape. It's like, hey, we know how to go there. We've won there, and so they definitely have probably some good feelings coming in here too. But I do remember that just kind of being a tough series and losing it on your home field, watching someone dogpile is never fun. So it's always a good reason to win, right?
I do think that sometimes when like the field is revealed, this happened to you guys in 14 for your regional, right? Like your 2 seed that year was Arkansas, and this year the 2 seed is Mississippi State, and there is like that initial reaction of like, got an SEC team coming here, right? Like it's cool you got the host, but you got this because there's this aura right around an SEC program. But UVA over the years, right, has had pretty good success. I mean, you guys had your battles with Vanderbilt. You guys beat Arkansas in 2014. Like, does that conference affiliation thing did that ever play a factor in like how you ever approach a tournament game?
Nope, unless there was something about what that conference happened to do. They're like, they tend to have guys that do this. Like, unless there was just some information that could actually help us from that, there was no worry about it on our end. There was no even thought about it. So I think it was just more, all right, here's our opponent, here's who they have, this is what they got, and we treated them the same as if we were playing ACC, Big Ten, whatever it is. So there was no thought about that really.
So how do you feel about no longer being the career home run leader here at UVA among guys who wore number 9?
Yeah, well, dude, he probably had that about 20 games in. He tied me to George Washington that one day.
That's true.
What's it like? Because I mean, we talk about this amongst ourselves a lot. We've talked to Mac about it. We've talked to Oak about it. But like the numbers that these guys put up now compared to like when you were here or even prior to when, like, what's it like from your perspective to see some of the numbers that guys are putting up these days?
It's funny. I was like, oh my goodness, could I just not hit the ball far? Like, what's going on here? I was just questioning me, but no. I mean, of course, it like stands out because I remember just being here. It was like you had to really get it out of the ballpark, and it seemed like home runs didn't play that big of an amount. I think maybe when I was here, 10 was the most a guy had in a season.
If a guy broke double digits, it was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember so that was definitely. It was just coming to games. You're seeing the ball fly out of the ballpark all the time. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a testament to how well they're swinging the bats. So there's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. But it was just whether the ball is flying more or what. I don't know. But it is just impressive what they're doing. But they've been doing it the last 5 years though. So it seems like every year they're hitting 330 something as a team. They're have the most doubles, most runs, or whatever it is. It just seems like every offensive category they're putting up some really good numbers for.
Do you have a guess on how many home runs the 2015 team hit? You're going to be shocked. It's here.
31.
Close. 35.
Wow.
And that was obviously the complete entire season. And as we sit before NCAA postseason starts, the Who's have 113.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
They had us beat before ACC play started.
For sure. It's wild to me.
Who had the most, Theis
or Pavin?
I think Theis might have gotten to maybe 10. Pavin had like 7 or something.
Yeah, look, Theis had 10 and Pavin had 7. Yep.
There you go.
Look at me.
Jeez.
What was your batting average?
68 games. 68 games. 35 homers.
Yep.
I think Chris Newell's actually the all-time leader in home runs wearing number 9. So we don't want to sell him short. But Henry Ford past Kenny, now he's going for Chris Newell. Yeah. But what's it? How often are you out here watching these guys since you still live here in town?
So I mean, I pretty much like if there's a game on like the ACC network and stuff has been so good about just posting games to where like if every game is accessible, you can kind of throw it on. Like obviously can't leave work too often to get to like 1 and 3 o'clock games, but whenever kind of in the early afternoon games, like I'm just out there watching them on ACC network and I'm coming out when I can. Didn't get to as many as I would like, but got out here for a few. But it's a lot of fun to watch, and just especially with the success they've had. And I'm excited for these guys getting to host out here because when was the last time they hosted here? Hopefully
last year they hosted, and then prior to that it was
16.
16, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're watching, can you kind of sense, I bet Mac's giving him a hard time about this, or I bet Oak's all over him about that. Like, what's it like as a guy who went through this program and played in so many games to watch a game from that perspective?
So first and foremost, I try to figure out if I still remember the signs from Coach Mack, but I think they have these little devices now. So I think I'm just doing it for no darn reason. But but there are some funny things. I'm always watching it with my wife or some friends. Like if I see something, I was like, "Ooh, Mac wouldn't like that." Like because you know some like certain thing, and it's not always like, "Oh, you struck out." It's why didn't you get from first to third on that? Like you just know those things, and like you know what things kind of like would rub Oak the wrong way. It's like, oh yeah, he wouldn't like that. It's always like those. I think that's one thing what makes him so good too. It's not the result stuff. It's just like those little things that like they really want to focus on that help ball clubs win games if you do them right throughout the whole year. So I think they really focus on like those important stuff. But I always definitely keep an eye out for catching the vibes of what might be going on in there.
Speaking of vibes, and I remember you talked about this in the documentary that you are the poster, you're the poster's likeness for 1186. There it is. It's Omaha on Scott's screen. But you talked about this, I think, in this documentary, because I remember you pointed out about one of the lows during the rough stretch of that year was that Louisville series. You guys get swept. The last game was on national television. It wasn't clean, traditional UVA baseball by any stretch. There's a lot of errors. And I think you talked in that documentary about like the chewing that was put on by the coaching staff. Can you give us a feel? I mean, you can edit it, but of what that was like, and was that how impactful? Because sometimes you think of coaches laying into their players and not doing anything. Did that really have an impact on how that team moved on from that series and obviously went on to win the national championship?
Yeah, like every time like something like that occurs, you're like, oh, get in your seats, get focused. Like we're in for it. Like there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I don't know if it was Easter or Mother's Day. It was one of those, but it was one of those holidays. I just remember I was like, ooh, they're gonna be waiting for a while. Sorry, Mom. but yeah, they come in there and especially after like the poor performance that we had, I can't remember the exact details, but like it was ugly. Everyone knew it. Yeah, you don't meet to talk about how good you played for those. So, but I just remember it wasn't just like a coming in there throwing stuff, bashing. It was more of just like kind of like you just got punched in the gut. I think jaw would probably make more sense for that game. But you just got hit hard. Like, what are you gonna do? And kind of like they called out a couple things like that people did, and certainly I certainly got some of those, which I deserved. You know what I mean? Like they're not gonna just say something to say it. It's what they're thinking, it's what they're feeling, and everyone agrees with it. You know what I mean? If you're sitting there and yeah, you can be upset about it, but they're right in every instance of it. So it's more like a reality check type thing too. And I think right then and there, I can't remember exactly how close we were to like the end of the year, but it was like, hey, we just lost 3 games I think it was only 2 at that point because we ended up playing Monday the next day and still lost. But so like there's not many games left here and we gotta turn it up. So I really think that was like kind of like the start of just, all right, like we're maybe stop going through the motions, lock in, or else we're not going to be playing much baseball this year.
So before we let you go, obviously the Hoos are playing on Friday. You have a game on Friday too, right?
Yep, certainly do. So I think the Hoos play at noon though, right?
Yeah, Hoos play at noon.
So at least I can catch that. But yeah, that's opening night for the Tom Sox. So I'll be at their field 7:00 sharp.
What is that going to be like? You're an assistant coach, right? Is that your official title, assistant coach?
Yep.
How'd that all come to be?
So before the UVA season started, I was just kind of thinking, I was like, no, I just want to kind of just get back into baseball, just somehow, just kind of just start being involved in it again. And I actually met with O'Connor just to see what he thought, like some of his ideas. Like I was like, oh, what is it like for a guy who wants to do this, wants to do that? And then we talked for a little bit and he gave me Jeff Burton, who's a great like contact in baseball around this area. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with him. And he's like, oh yeah, just give him a call and kind of just go from there. So I ended up just texting him. We hop on a call, and then I think 10 minutes later, I'm just coaching the Tom Sox. So it was a pretty cool thing, and it was quick, and just for me, it was a great way to just dip my toe in baseball while still like there's 7:00 games. I get to keep doing my day job, so there's no like worry about that stuff. So it's a great opportunity to dip my toe in there and just see if like, oh, if I really love this thing, then heck, I'll get something else to pursue. So it's a great thing, and I'm really excited for it. And I don't even know how I'm going to be as a coach. Like, like summer ball, I've given lessons to 10-year-olds. That's pretty easy. You can be like, yeah, do that. Those are pretty easy ones. But, I've played summer ball. They all have their coach max back at their stadium. So I think it'll be something I'm just going to kind of learn as I go, just how much to help, like when are the right times to interact. But I know we do have like a very like veteran coaching staff, like, and I think I'm just going to make sure I'm asking tons of questions there so I can just be as helpful as I can without feering like I'm kind of interfering too much.
Do they have the number 9 set out for you, or what's the...
Hey, Justin. I knew we'd get him on the podcast one of these days.
Oh, yeah.
Kitty down.
Sorry, Scott. Sorry for that.
I was going to say, do they have the number 9 set out for you? I mean, I feel like that's got to be part of it. Although I feel like you got to make an important decision as a coach. Like, like there's not a lot of coaches anymore that wear the full jersey. So what's your stance on that?
Honestly, I have no stance on like whether the full jersey or not, but I did. They asked me, it was like, "Oh, what number you want?" I was like, "I'll take that if no one's got it." But then I almost felt bad. It's like, who am I? It's like just for my ego to wear the same number. That some poor kid who's actually playing on the team. He's like, "Dang it, I wanted that number." It's like, no.
Just get 26. Just get 26.
There you go.
Right?
I'll just take it from him and put a pullover on the whole time.
44. Isn't that Mac's number 44?
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
When's the last time Mac actually wore his 44 jersey?
He's the biggest culprit, I feel like. I haven't seen him wear a jersey in a really long time. There's a couple of pictures around the facility with him on it.
It always takes us, like I was looking at the 2011 Chris Taylor walk-off, and I'm like, who's that 44 hopping through there?
Yeah.
He's like tiptoeing down the line,
Right.
isn't he? Like in celebration.
Yeah.
In the dog palace, he takes it off so you can see his number.
What's it like to when you see? Because again, like I was going through old highlights, putting stuff together. When you see old highlights from 2015, especially, what is that like?
It's crazy. Like you see, like kind of if you're watching like the AC Network and stuff, you'll like see some like highlights of like that team and all that stuff. But it's just so fun to watch, and I'm not better than it. I went back and watched some too. I'm not gonna lie. So, but it's just exciting. Like it was just an exciting time, and especially like with the postseason coming up, it's like, oh, that was so fun. I'm so excited for these guys, and I want to kind of get that feeling back. But just going through it, there's so many exciting moments, so many different guys who came through for us. It was just an incredible run, and just to be able to have anything to watch to get to remember it some is something I'll always do when I get the chance.
How often sorry, I was maybe the same question here, Andrew, but I wanted to credit you, but how often do people come up to you about the play in the College World Series? I think Andrew described it perfectly in the podcast, or not the podcast, sorry, the movie 1186 to Omaha was, the most iconic defensive play in program history. How often do people kind of come up to you and ask you about it?
I think if someone comes up and knows who I am and recognizes me, I'm going to hear about it.
The first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you see that, you talk about sometimes you do watch your old highlights. When that,
our team's highlights.
Your team's highlights, yes. If the 2015 team highlight tape is on, or if a replay of that game is on, what inning was that? That was the third inning, fourth inning?
Fourth, I believe.
Fourth, okay.
You remember who hit it?
Yeah, do you remember who hit it?
It was their catcher. I'm pretty sure it was the 9-hole catcher.
Okay.
Sorry to call him out. Jeez.
Do you when you watch back on it, how do you relive that? Like, are you still going
You reenact it?
Yeah, you react it in your living room. But when it's going off the bat, do you still don't think you're gonna get there, or
The one thing that I'll remember more in the moment than remember watching it is when I knew I had it in my glove, but when I threw it, I just remember I was like, oh, that ball's now it's going to be 10 feet off the bag. He's safe, all for nothing. And then somehow just Pavin, it didn't tail maybe as much as I thought. And it ended up Pavin was able to have some fancy footwork to get it. But that was definitely what I remember from the play during the time. But yeah, no diving around the living room.
Had you made a play similar to that in high school and college before that, in practice?
I not maybe exactly like that, but I feel like there was, I think, one maybe in regional sophomore year that I had the backside dive. Sorry, Jared King, but he dropped it. Knee high throw. Sorry, buddy.
It takes both. The play by Pavin was, I don't think I've really seen a first baseman ever go up the line like that. That was just a wild
and not get clobbered by a runner.
Yeah. It was a good improv on his part for sure.
As a freshman.
Yeah. And it wasn't traditionally a first baseman. Am I correct there or no? Was he?
For the most part.
Played a little bit outfield, but
okay.
Yeah. What do you remember from the dog pile?
Actually, I do remember Matt Theis not taking his catcher's helmet off.
Mm-hmm.
And we embrace, I remember embracing with Kirby and him, and just having a cut here, But I remember the thing about dog pile is you're crushing someone's head under your stomach. I remember after 30 seconds, get the heck off me! Obviously you're as excited as can be, but you don't want anyone to get suffocated down.
Smothered.
Yeah, seriously. But it was just so exciting, and there's never a bad dog pile. That's for darn sure.
All right, that seems like a pretty good place to wrap things up. Maybe we'll get to see another dog pile of Who's in the next coming weeks. Like we said, we got regional baseball here this weekend. Penn and the Who's on Friday, St. John's and Mississippi State. The other two teams here in the Charlottesville Regional, we will see how this year's run unfolds. Kenny, thanks for reliving the glory days, man, for all of us.
No, of course, guys. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us here on 1186 The Podcast.